Hi! This video is going to be in English because I recorded, 1 year ago I recorded a speech I had for an event where I go through my own story and the way I created my courses, my Latin courses, and this whole Satura Lanx thing. So I let you watch the video, and in the end there's a little surprise for you. Welcome to this presentation, Annales Recentissimae Latinitatis, or Teaching Latin through podcasts and online courses. Here's where I tell you my story, what took me to Gustatio Linguae Latinae, and in making so, I'll trace the lines of the recent history of Latin and how it mixed with social media. So here I am, Irene, docendi studiosa. I'm passionate about learning, especially languages, and teaching. Familia Romana is the book that made everything else start. Yes, because in a Liceo Classico Beccaria in Milan, the high school where I studied, Ivana Milana, my wonderful teacher, would use this book. She adopted a sort of mixed method, a mixed approach. She wouldn't speak only Latin in the classroom, but she would present us Latin as a living language. We would do versions, translations, and grammar explication were in Italian, but we got a sense that Latin was indeed a language. And thanks to her and her encouragements, I went on to participate in many certamina translation competitions from Greek and Latin, and I usually won them. I also started attending Sodalitas Latina Mediolanensis, the spoken Latin circle that was in Milan, where I was the only young person, but which I enjoyed a lot, and that was my beginnings of speaking Latin. I also started to attend conventicula and septimanae Latinae organized all around the world in summertime. Here I am with Alessandro Conti, or Alexander Veronensis, who at the time was an Italian high school teacher that was getting started on his own journey towards speaking Latin in the classroom. And here I am also with Paolo Pezzuolo, who would later found the Schola Humanistica along with Giuseppe Marcellino. We were in Vienna, in one of my first Latin conventicula. Here I am again with Paolo Pezzuolo, the year when we both won Certamen Ciceronianum, one of the most important Latin translation prizes in Italy. I got the second place, he got the third one, and we were invited or warmly requested to speak Latin during the prize ceremony. It was embarrassing. After high school, I obviously went on and studied classics at the university. I was admitted at Scuola Normale Superiore in Pisa, the most prestigious college in Italy. And here I am after 5 years getting my diploma in ancient history and classical philology. I must admit that during those years, I let speaking Latin and all I love about Latin pedagogy and the language on a side because I must study so hard that I thought I didn't have time for such things. And it wasn't any better that my professors, many of them at least, would despise us speaking Latin. After graduating, I moved to Belgium, to Brussels, and during those years, I would teach Latin and ancient Greek in Latin and Greek in Scola Nova, a wonderful private school founded by some friends I had knew during some summer conventicula in Rome. And I was also starting to teach in some public schools in Belgium. These experiences started to make me doubt about what I thought was my vocation in life, that is, teaching Latin and Greek in high schools. It was wonderful to teach young people, but it was also hard to constantly have to fight to speak Latin in the classroom because that wasn't always admitted. And it was hard to be forced to use methods I didn't like. So when in 2018 Fabio Company, founder of Athena Nova, an online platform Italian-based that teaches classical languages, asked me to teach with them, I gladly agreed. So along with my teaching in actual schools, public and private, I would teach using Famiglia Romana at Athena Nova. I loved it! And now I have to do a quick digression. This is my phone, my stultophonum, the one I've had since 2007. I love this phone and it was perfect for me until I felt the urge to buy my first smartphone or Calidophonum, even if we could argue which one is the smarter. So how came I wanted to buy a smartphone? That's because in those years, Latin podcasts would start to make their appearance. These are the pioneers: Quomodo Digitur by 3 American professors, Latinitium by Daniel Patterson, and Sermones Raedari by Alexander Veronensis, who would rant and talk in Latin about pedagogy and his own experiences in the Italian school. And so I said, ego quoque, me too, I want to start producing my own Latin podcast. And so I did. Shortly afterwards, there it was, Satura Lanx. I chose this name because I wasn't so sure about what I was going to speak. Satura Lanx means a tray full of fruits offered to the gods, so it also means variety. And I definitely liked producing podcasts because now I don't just have one, I have 3, Litterae Latinae Simplices, Satura Lanx, and Rara Avis, each for a different level: beginner, intermediate, advanced. And I wasn't the only one who liked producing podcasts, because these are just some of the Latin podcasts you can listen to now. If Famiglia Romana had been the beginning of my love for teaching, my podcast Satura Lanx was the beginning of my self-invented career. Because first, La Repubblica, a famous Italian newspaper, decided to write about me. Then I attended Caelum, Schola Aestiva Matristensis in Spain, first as a participant first, when I was expecting my first daughter, and some years later, after COVID, I was invited there again as a teacher. Here I am with Justin, Slocum Bailey, and Anna and Lida, creators of the podcast In Foro Romano. And during that first Caelum in 2018, I was already creating what would become Gustatio Linguae Latinae, my signature beginner Latin course. And so I went to Casper Porton, from the Netherlands, founder of Addisco, and Roberto Carfagni, Italian founder of Schola Latina, and I told them about my idea. They were, as always, really encouraging and supportive, and so on I went, filming more than 70 hours of spoken Latin and what would become Gustatio Linguae Latinae. I also asked Casper to help me comply with the laws, because even if many don't know it, in order to use Famiglia Romana we have to pay royalties to his heirs. In 2019, Gustatio Linguae Latinae was ready. Not only I'd used Famiglia Romana and the chapters, but I also added many additional content like the lectiones, 3-tiered readings I adapted to each chapter. Then there was Mores, where I talked about the Roman history and culture. and Grammatica, and much more. Since then, more than 600 students from all over the world, from 12 to 85 years old, have passed through my course, and all of them are brought together by the passion of Latin. Here's some of the feedback I get almost every day. Ian just can't believe he's listening to Latin for over 30 minutes and understanding everything without even making an effort. Keith, a colleague Latin teacher, writes that Gustatio Linguae Latinae is a pedagogical treasure which far surpasses anything the traditional American universities have to offer. Honestly, I'm not sure I deserve this much love, but what I know is that my course and the approach I use, that is teaching Latin as a living language and as a language as it is one of the most effective, if done well, in the world. And now the present, I'm renovating Gustatio Linguae Latinae, not because it wasn't effective, but because my teaching has evolved, I have evolved as a person, and it seemed it was the right time to add something new to the lessons. The structure, the lessons will remain the same because they already work and they are loved by my students. But my challenge with this renovation is to make those conventicula vibes even more apparent in the course, even if it's an online course. I also want to build a mentoring program and making it even easier for students to get through the course, because yes, it's a long course and I want to take you by my hand. I'll also shift towards an even more interactive and communicative approach of teaching. So that's all. If you want to see how I teach, you can check my YouTube channel Satura Lanx and also subscribe to my newsletter by downloading my free Catullus lesson. That will also show you how I teach, because it's really similar to some of the lessons you'll find into Gustatio Linguae Latinae. That's my story. Gratias plurimas. Hi, I'm Irene from the future and I have an update. I've been working on GLL since I recorded this video you just watched, and it was 2 years ago. Now GLL 2.0 is ready and shinier than ever, and I'm ready to launch it, which will be towards the end of May. After a free course, you can sign in to try my method and actually get the first lessons of GLL 2.0. So I'm waiting for you, and thank you for watching about my story. If you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to write. Vale!